Hey, welcome back to the OB broadcast. Today we are talking about, I guess we're talking about grapes and wine, and we're going to talk about pets and kittens. So I guess I'm turning into a suburban mum for the first half of the podcast. And then if I have time, depending on how much I talk, maybe we'll talk about Bojack Horseman, because it's one of those shows that is, well, firstly, phenomenally good. But secondly, it's one of those shows that, and it's very infrequent for me to have like a really strong, not like conspiracy theory, but sort of like I guess maybe a video essay is not the right word, but basically I have like very strong ideas about what is really going on below the surface of the show. Again, not in a conspiracy theory capacity, but more in like this is more what's going on. I guess that sounds very sort of like up yourself, but it's not. It's really just like an observation that I had, and I thought maybe. Right, so I wanted to start off with grapes and wine because it is that time of the year. In Australia right now, it is obviously, it is very early on in the year, and we have summer at the beginning of the year, and wow, it's incredibly hot. It's hot. You know all those jokes you heard about Australia being really hot? It's true because it is. It's just really hot. But that being aside, it is the time when fruit is in season. And so I'm half Italian, half Portuguese, and my grandfather on the Italian side, ever since he came here to Australia, he's been making wine. So he has a big property, and on the back of the property, he's got like a decent sized vineyard. Now, this is the first time I've done this. What I'm about to say, not the wine stuff, but this is the first time I've done sort of like a picture in picture, or sort of juxtaposing a picture on top of the video. So if you're listening to me talking and you're not seeing anything, it means I couldn't figure it out. But more than likely, what you're looking at right now is a picture of the vineyard. I've tried to take a few different photos from a few different angles, and just between you and me, it's from a few different years, not that it particularly matters. But yeah, so that's what you're looking at hopefully now is kind of the vineyard, just rows and rows of grapevines, as you can imagine. Now he, planted those when he, first came here. What? I mean, he's like late 80s now, and he came here early 20s, so like 60, 70 years. These grapevines have been growing, which is pretty incredible. For years and years and years growing up, we were, really exposed to alcohols as a whole, but specifically the wine. We were, pretty aware of it from a young age. Hey, this is an adult beverage, and I guess it was the idea of teaching us and showing us from a young age was A, it was part of the culture, but B, to learn to respect it so you didn't go out and abuse it when you're older. And I feel like there's a bit of a trend there. Kids that, see it and understand it are less likely to abuse it, which is completely anecdotal. This is just from me and the instances I've experienced. I'm sure there's outliers and, alternative lines of reasoning, but, that was part of it. But the other major part is that, he made his own wine. Always, for years and years. And for the last, I want to say, maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, I've been going down and helping out him make the wine. It's interesting because I'm 22, and my sister, wow, that's so old. I hate saying that out loud. But my sister's 11. And I always thought, oh wow, that sucks, because my grandfather on the other side passed away. So I always think, oh wow, she's so young. She's not really getting to, experience, all these rich years of like, relationship of fun I've had with these people. But on the same token, I'm like, my family is the youngest. So like my mum from that side has 2 older sisters. And both of those sisters have kids that are, my cousins that are much older than me. So here I am thinking, I'm lucky and my sister's missing out. But really, I've missed, well, not missed, but, my older cousins had a lot of years of my grandparents when they were younger. So that notwithstanding, it is important to note, however, because I go down and I've been doing the wine for the last couple of years, and I don't know if other people have done it before me, or because basically he came and said, "Hey, look, I'm not going to do the." I was really tempted to do the accent, but I just can't, so I won't. But he came and said, like, look, I want your help with the wine. It only happens once a year. you basically just have to get up early in the morning on like 3 or 4 different days throughout a 1 to 2 month period, and you just help me with a few things. And I said, yeah, of course, absolutely no reason why I couldn't or wouldn't help. And it's been really good. It's been a good experience. I don't know. I don't know if it's because like most of my cousins don't live close by. They're all older than me, but they don't all live within an area where they could help. But yeah, it'd be really interesting, and I should ask, but I have no idea if this is something that all the grandchildren do at different points, or if this is, something that I've just, I don't want to say been burdened with, because that's not the right way of looking at it, but maybe this is just something that I have been given the opportunity to do, just given the fact that I am, in the right location and right age, and he is at the right age to need help, and I'm able to help him. So I went this yesterday morning, first lot of the year, and what we do is we basically just get up really, really early, and we walk up and down the vineyards picking grapes. Now, it's as simple as that. It sounds simple. It mostly is that simple. The hardest thing about it is the fact that here in Australia, even at like 6:30, 7 o'clock in the morning, it's like really hot. Like it starts to get really hot once you hit 8 o'clock. That's when you go, yeah, it's time to pack it in. We can't do too much more. So you do have to get up quite early. And like I said, 8 o'clock is when you start to feel it, but you end up going a bit later because, stuff needs to get done. And the other thing is you say it out loud and you walk up and down these neatly placed and planted aisles, and you cut with a pair of scissors just the bunches of grapes. It sounds really easy, and I think if you've ever played a game where you've had to do something similar, or you've watched a TV show, or even seen it in person, or not had to do it, or been had it described to you, you would think fairly easy. Not the case. The thing about grapes and grapevines, especially in our case, because it's not like a very it's not monitored by a big company. We're not mass producing wine for stores. It's just for us, for our family. So the grapevines are just what they are, right? And the posts that they affix themselves to are what they are. The other thing is that because he's quite old at this point, and because he's really the only one that has access to the property at all times and has the ability and the knowledge, it means that it's not particularly well kept. Now the grapes grow, and the area around it is fine. It's not like you're walking over jagged metal to get through it, but they kind of is bordering on overgrown, at least vertically. Horizontally, it's pretty clear. But as a result of that, you sort of have to really maneuver yourself around just like posts and wires that are suspending the various grapevines. But you really have to struggle and work at it to actually get to them. Because you might have like, a bunch of grapes and it's like within your purview. And you go to get it, but, you've got like leaves in the way and branches, and then other grapevines, and then these wires that sort of hold everything up. And sometimes it's really difficult to actually get in there. And then once you're in there, it's sometimes quite difficult to actually get your hand in there with the scissors, find a location to cut, and then actually collect them. Otherwise, they fall and they get a bit. I was gonna say they get a bit bruised and dented and squashed when you drop them. That's only like somewhat of a problem because they are going into a crusher anyway. But you do want to avoid dropping on the floor if possible, because obviously you do. So yeah, that's sort of the process. You go up and down, and normally you have a bit of a crate with you just to stand on for these like really hard to reach ones. It's a process, and then you can only, because of our setup, the crates that we're putting them in. They're about I'm measuring with my hand, trying to figure it out. I would say maybe 70 centimeters by 30 centimeters in like length and width, and then depth is probably another, I don't know, half a meter. So they're decent sized crates. They're quite hefty, especially once you've filled them with grapes. Now you can only get 2 of those in the wheelbarrow, and the wheelbarrow can only just go through the different aisles. So it's really quite tedious because you have to fill up these crates that are on the floor. So immediately you're like reaching up and you're trying to worm your way through these vines, put them in the bucket or the basket or the crate. Then you got to wheelbarrow it through, and because it's a wheelbarrow, it's only got one wheel. There's a bunch of ditches because the chickens sometimes walk through that area, and yeah, that just makes it incredibly difficult to navigate. And you bring it all the way up. It's about like a 2 minutes, so 120 seconds of pushing a wheelbarrow, which is not much, but it's lots of curves and angles and trying to navigate it through, small spaces. And you just do that over and over and over until you have, I can't even count how many baskets it would be off the top of my head, but you're doing it for a couple hours, right? So that's the first process. And so I did that on yesterday and then a little bit this morning because we needed a few more grapes. But then there's the crushing process. So right now, if I've done everything correctly, you should be seeing basically 2 large bathtubs as well as a very, water wheel looking machine. Basically, and it's so cool because he's done this so much that he has like specific bricks and specific chunks of wood and wedges that all come in together. And he's just done it so often, or over so many years, that he goes, this brick goes here, these ones go there, and then you put these bits of wood here to make everything level, and then you chuck in the wedges, but don't put that wedge there, you got to put it over here, otherwise everything's off balance. So he's really got it down to a fine art, even to the point where the bricks have been there so long that even when you go to move them out to pack it away and you go to put them back, they still sort of leave an outline, so it's very easy to put them, at least in location, back where they have to go. So yeah, you're looking at 2 bathtubs. Can't remember if I've got an empty bathtub picture or they're both full. But basically what you do is you take all of these crates. Oh, you know what? I do remember how many crates there are. Well, I mean, I don't, but there will be a picture on screen of how many crates of grapes. And even then, in fairness, that is not all of the grapes that grow, but that's the capacity of both bathtubs. So you don't have to pick any more than that. But yeah, what we do is we take that big machine that you are probably looking at on a photo right now, and that's, I guess, what do you call it? Not a trapezium, sort of like that oblong shape, right? The upside down pyramid. Basically, inside there is 2 rotating crushing wheels, as well as it's not a curved, but sort of an angular wire that spins around. And so the angular wire spins and it pushes the grapes down into the crushing wheels. And then at the bottom, all the juice and then the husks from the grapes are just spat out. So my job is to pick up a crate, bring it over to the side, and from the side, my nonno slowly puts in the grapes because A, you have to do it pretty slowly, and B, because he is a certain way with this, I don't want to say like militant, but he is pretty finicky about who does what. Only he can put in the grapes, so he'll slowly put them in, and I'll come around the other side, and I sort of got like a curved pitchfork, and you're supposed to grab that and use it to pull the husks down towards the other end of the bathtub. Basically, you're trying to get it to fill up with the grape juice that's been pressed, but also the husks themselves, and you have to get that evenly throughout the whole bathtub, because otherwise you're going to have like a mountain on one side and nothing on the other side, and it's going to be uneven. You worry about, things tipping and falling over, which is obviously what you want to avoid. So I'll use the pitchfork, I'll pull the husks all the way down to the end. He'll empty the bucket, I'll go get another one, lift it up to him, and you just repeat the process until both bathtubs are about, you can see how full they are. In terms of liquid, it comes up really quite high. But it's, given the fact that, is it Archimedes who did all the buoyancy stuff? The philosopher or the maths dude? I think it was. No, but basically because of the water displacement of the husks, it looks like it's a lot higher, the liquid content. But yeah, the liquid probably is only like a third of the way up the bathtub. So from here, and I was looking around, I don't think I have a picture of like this bit in particular, but basically you let them sit and ferment for a couple of days. Well, it's not fermenting yet. This process is they just sort of sit for a few days. The reason behind it, I couldn't tell you. He just says, okay, come back in 4 days and we'll do the next step. And I go, all right, you've shown me how to do it. I guess it doesn't matter if you tell me why we do it this way, because it comes out pretty good regardless. So after a few days, roughly 4, we'll come back, and then they will have, I guess, changed in smell a little bit. They start to smell a little closer to wine and a little less like grapes, which is, I guess, what you would expect. And basically from there, there's a plug at the bottom because it's a bath. So you get a bucket and you start bucketing all the liquid into these large, I guess, like vats, like big steel vats. We've got 2 of them for the 2 bathtubs, and you just bucket and fill the water completely. You want to avoid getting as much of the husks themselves as possible, because this is what's going to be distilled down to the wine. So plastic bucket, take it out of the bathtub into the vat. Eventually you're going to get to the point where it's just husks, and this is where the press comes into it. So I'm going to try, I don't know how this is going to work, I'm going to try and zoom in or put a red circle around what I'm indicating here. But basically, in the background of one of the pictures, it sort of looks like an upright barrel with a steel rod coming out of it and a green metal plate sitting on top. And basically what this is the press. And it's kind of crazy how it works. And I hopefully can find the pictures of the aftermath of it. But basically what you do is you take the 2 halves of that wooden crate, because it does come apart, you put it together on top of a disc. Now this disc has sort of a channel coming down. So the idea is anything you're putting into there is being funneled down into a little pouring point. So you have your bucket down there and you can fill up into the vat from there. Now you're not putting any liquid in there. What you're doing is you're taking all of those grape husks that you can see in those bathtubs, you take them and you pour it into this, large crate thing. And you would think, looking at it, that it has 1 centimeter, so like half an inch wide gaps between all the wooden slats. You would think that would cause a problem, have liquid pouring out, you would have grape husks falling out and spilling. Not the case. Not the case at all, actually. You sort of just put it straight in, and when there's very little in there, the liquid just goes straight into the pouring point, under which they have a bucket, and that goes straight up into the vat. But the more husks you put on there, it sort of compacts. And so you're pouring in more husks, and the more that you're putting in, it's sort of adding weight to it. So any liquid that's left in those husks is being extruded out down into the pouring point. But where it gets particularly interesting is that once you have reached the limit, got to the top of the barrel, it's full. What we have is about 8 bits of wood that are very, very specific, and he has them in specific orders because of the way that they go. And basically, there's 2 that are semicircles that roughly match the size of the barrel. So you put those on top of the husks, and then afterwards you stack up woods in alternating directions like you would a Jenga stack. From there, that green bit of metal at the top, that's actually a crank. So you get a long steel pole and you put it into the hole that's on the right-hand side. And from there, you push it forward and backwards, and it slowly cranks down the metal shaft. And now, because the metal shaft is going straight onto those wooden plates, it is just compressing the hell out of those grape husks. So, firstly, any liquid that is still in there is just getting squashed, compressed. Anything that's in there is just coming straight out. But secondly, what it's doing is it's making room for even more husks. You'll probably have to do this about 3 times with the setup that we have. So you compress it all the way down, and that gives you another 50% capacity. You put in more husks, you compress it down, get out more juice, make more room. You got about 33% left, and then you put in the rest of the husks. Now, while this is a really cool, I guess, every part of the buffalo, is that the phrase when you're talking about not wasting anything? Well, whatever it is, every piece of the buffalo, every piece of the cow, whatever it is, it's a similar sort of thing. There is no wastage. So all of those husks, they don't just sit there. They're compressed, condensed down into, honestly, it's close to a brick of just crushed grapes. Like you would think that when you put your hands in there, it would be soft and it would all fall apart. And when you took away the 2 parts of the barrel, those wooden slats, everything would just fall apart. But it's compressed so tightly that it's just this compacted brick of husks. And then all of that goes to feed the chickens that he has. So yeah, it's a really interesting process. And look, I'm not going to lie to you. Waking up early and then going and doing that in the sunlight, it kind of sucks at times. It's long, it's hot, uh, it's not the most fun thing. However, actually doing the process of making the wine, learning how to do it, spending time with him and helping him out, because otherwise he'd be doing it by himself. I'm very lucky to, even have the opportunity. So I'm not going to, in any way make it sound like it's a negative thing, because it by no means is. So the next step after we've, cleaned up everything and we've taken all the husks out to feed the chickens, from there, that's it, really. What happens after that is the vats will be sealed. They will ferment for a certain amount of time, and then he'll just bottle it. He's not actually asked me to come over and do that, but I wouldn't insult him saying, "Hey, do you need some help moving a 750 milliliter bottle of an empty bottle and then filling it up? Do you think you need help with that?" I wouldn't insult him. But yeah, I'm sure at some point he'll get me over to do that just so I could learn it. It's one of those things. I don't know if he is. I know that he does it because he loves it. He loves making the wine. He loves drinking the wine. And I don't know if it's something that he wants to just do because he enjoys it, or if it's like a legacy that he wants to pass on, and he wants the tradition of making wine to continue. I would definitely love to do that. From what I understand, the grapes themselves, growing them is pretty low maintenance, and he's still pretty healthy. But knock on wood, that let's say this properly. He will be here for a long time still. Knock on wood. It's the one thing I'm pretty superstitious about. But yeah, at some point, I guess I would like to take it on. The equipment's all there, and provided we can still access the grapes, I guess why not? It's pretty interesting. I always take some photos and show my friends and tell them every time I do it, and I try and bring them a bottle of wine if they are interested. No, just because it's not one of those things that still happens en masse. It's sort of a niche, and I think it's pretty interesting. I love the old fella. He's got such a remarkable sense of humor. They've both got tempers. No. Last year, I was gonna say, maybe I shouldn't say this, but they're both quite old. I don't think they'll ever listen to this, and I don't think they've got any concern about me telling this. But basically, last year actually, they were getting ready to do the process of putting the crushed grapes and the liquid into the vats and the press respectively. And my nonna was very, very adamant about washing all the buckets. And my nonno said they're perfectly clean, they don't need to be washed. Now, I don't really know how well it was washed, and I'm not sure, but maybe even if it was a little dirty, it's all going to be fermented. I'm pretty sure the process of fermentation will kill any bugs. But basically, with the strength of 1,000 suns that I've never seen in a man his age, he got really frustrated because they're Italian. They are prone to frustration pretty quick, and he just gets this bucket, and like something out of Scooby-Doo, he just overarm throws it straight onto the ground, smashing this bucket everywhere. And at the time, it was really distressing. I had to raise my voice and sort of treat them like children because they were acting like children. Basically, tell them to stop fighting or I was going to leave. Spoilers, I wasn't, but basically just calm them down. Especially when you're older. You don't want to be getting that frustrated because it can do a number to you. Especially when it's over something so insignificant. Anyway, I'd all but forgotten about it, and this year we were taking the bathtubs from where they were stored, ready to make the wine, and he just starts laughing in a way that I've never heard before. And he starts pointing at the ground. And I'm looking around, I'm trying to figure out, has something come out of the bathtub because we were just washing them? Is something wrong with them? And he's just pointing at this, roughly the size of two hands put together, just this blue piece of plastic from the bucket that he just completely shattered the year before. And it was something remarkable seeing him laugh like that over just some dumb thing that he did last year. You always worry that when you get to a certain age, you start to lose, parts of yourself. Ideas about dementia start to scare you. But seeing that man so full of life in that moment was just something special. And so, I guess that's making wine. But enjoy your family while you're there, especially the older members of your family. Why don't you just pause this and call up any grandparents you have right now? Just do it. Why not? Anyway, so that's my winemaking anecdote. That's me whining about wine. Oh, should I put that in the title? No, that would be terrible. I would hate me for doing that. No one's going to click on a video that says whining about wine. Ugh. Anyway, how did you enjoy your Valentine's Day? I did the same thing that I do every Valentine's Day, which is cry. No, I didn't do anything for Valentine's Day, although I do have a story about a kitten. So, a Valentine's Day, as it is every year, is like a non-day for me. Nothing happens. Nobody messages me. I don't message anyone. Nobody interacts with me, and I don't interact with anyone. That's just sort of the way it is. I've never dated anyone on Valentine's Day, and yeah, so Valentine's Day is super fun. But anyway, it was a Thursday, and as you may or may not know, I have my radio show on a Thursday. Now I can't remember what was the lead up to. Oh, that was the lead up because I remember the day sucked. Basically, I had put in a job application for not a radio job, but a good job. It was at one of the last remaining branches that sells like CDs and DVDs of music and TV shows, and it was like really close to me, and it would be a good chance for me to like see new music coming in, and it would be a great way to come up with radio content, just saying, hey, this album's just come out if you're interested. Basically, I didn't get the job. Kind of sucked, honestly. I'm pretty sure the day sucked for another reason. I can't remember what it was. I was probably getting kicked to the ground in Monster Hunter World because I suck at everything. But yeah, that was the day. I went through, I wrote my radio show for the night. The format is 2 talk breaks and then a third talk break, which is quickfire news, where I basically get 3 or 4 news headlines or topics of interest that are not, super common knowledge, but are interesting nonetheless. And I sort of just briefly go over them in like 1 to 2 sentences per topic. Just a way to get, I phrase it as a way of getting, a bunch of information very quickly and very broadly. But in actuality, it's when, what it's become is an outlet for going, look at all these stories. They're all pretty interesting, but they're all pretty short, or they're too long for me to want to do any research about it. So I'll just put them all together and I'll wrap it up in a nice little bundle, Humble Bundle style. So that's basically what it is. So I spent the day writing my show, being kind of bummed out about the job application and about losing at video games and about losing in love, really, I guess. And I was waiting to go down to the radio station, and I just hear my mum screaming for my brother. Well, screaming my brother's name, which is never good. I didn't know if something had happened to him, and she was, exclaiming his name, or if she was calling for him. Either way, usually bad. What had happened is she was calling for him because our dog, and I say our dog, I mean his dog, but by his dog, I mean sort of the family dog, but not really. He got it for his birthday, but he's not like a real good maintain the dog and give it enough attention type of person. So it sort of became the family's property, even though I'm like not the biggest dog person. But yeah, our dog Riley had found something, and he was throwing around a live animal. Now, he is still a pretty young dog, so he's still pretty playful and not necessarily the smartest. He's gone at it to a snake in the past. He's obviously been okay. I think he's tried eating snakes in the past, dead ones. I don't have. See, this is the thing. My dad was saying like he's a smart dog, but he would be screwed if he ever came across a live snake because he would just go at it and it would nip him. But yeah, he's ingested a dead snake because he's very clever, and he's probably. Well, we do have some wild rabbits on the property because it's quite a large property, and he'll chase them around. So he is aware of what life is other than humans and himself. So Mum was yelling, screaming, saying that Riley's got something, and for whatever reason, I went, okay, time to sprint. I'm not the most active person. I do martial arts training 3 times a week, and because our instructor, well, basically everyone except for my dad and I who goes there, are like really fit, like marathon runners. They do a lot of exercise, and we do as well, even though we struggle. You would think that would put me in a more fit state of mind and, well, state of being, I guess. Not the case. Not a good sprinter, not a good runner, don't have a lot of stamina. So any sort of like fast and intense exercise does not sit well with me. Oh, that reminds me, I have training tonight, so we should hurry this up. But yeah, for whatever reason, the dog had something, and my brain said, you got to sprint and get it out of his mouth. And the only time I've ever been this, invested in the dog was when he was a puppy, and he picked up a shard of glass. He knocked something over, glass, smashed everywhere, took a piece of glass, took it in his mouth, and thought, I'm having this. You want this? Nah. And, this was like, a year or two ago when he was still like very young. Old enough to know better, but young enough to, I guess, be like, puppies will be puppies. But yeah, so I sprinted out around the house. Sucks, big property, a lot of running, but I eventually caught up with him. And as it turned out, he had a kitten, a little black kitten. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't really know what to do. He's quite he's not a strong dog, but he's real adamant. So when I finally caught up to him, because I guess he wanted to be caught, because he's a dog. If he wanted to keep running and not get caught, he wouldn't have. But he stopped, and I guess he put it down, and I grabbed him by the collar to stop him from getting closer. And he was really just like, he was intent on getting closer to it and picking it back up. And it was kind of a struggle to get him away, because I tried to move him and he wouldn't move, and I tried to take him by the collar and he would sort of just sit down and make sounds as if he was choking. So I couldn't move him along without hurting him. So obviously I had to stop. But yeah, just this tiny little thing, less than the size of your hand, like, I don't know, 10 centimeters wide, like just tiny little baby. It still had one of its eyes closed. So it was either sick because it was a stray, or it was still, young enough that it was only just opening its eyes. Either way, it was not owned by someone. It was either a stray or it was dumped. And it was, just like, tiny and defenseless. Like I said, it was either a stray that had wandered onto our property or had been dumped somewhere and wandered onto our property. Somehow, for whatever reason, it managed to actually make it onto our property, which, we're out in like, semi-bushland. So I guess props to him, or I guess her, for making it out that far. So I got the dog out of there, and I was worried about picking it up because, I know that you're not supposed to pick up some like birds and stuff because the oils on your hand can mess with them. And also I didn't know what condition it was in. I don't know if I was going to be picking up a handful of entrails, and because it was dark, because I was about to go to my radio show. Of course, I was literally about to leave, and it was dark, and it didn't look like it was moving, and it didn't sound like it was moving, and I thought it killed it. So I thought, oh god, if this has got a collar, we're gonna have to explain this to someone, because at that point, it was still dark. I had no idea what was going on. Couldn't see if it was in one piece or if it was what was going on. We ended up getting a flashlight and having a look, and it was just covered in this like really dark, sticky substance. And because of the way its body was, and because it was quite young, it looked like it had been sort of mangled in the dog's mouth. So I was really not sure what we were going to do. Mum ended up getting a large box that we had left over and picking it up and taking it inside. For some reason, maybe it's because because he's not like a malicious dog, so maybe it's because he was just playing with it. Because apparently, from what Mum said, he was sort of throwing it up in the air and then catching it as if it was like a toy, which is kind of sadistic, but also it's a dog. But yeah, we took it inside and it had this black sticky substance all over it, and I thought, that's blood. It's because it was a black cat, dark substance, sticky blood. It wasn't. It turns out. Or we didn't even find out what it was, but Mum had, because Mum works from home and she works in the medical field. She has lots of rubber gloves and Q-tips and all that sort of stuff. So she sort of tried to clean it and peel it off, and it definitely wasn't blood. So anyway, that was a Thursday night. Uh, Long story short, well, long story slightly less long. We took it, and I say we. Mum took it to the clinic the next day. It was because my sister, she goes to school with a bunch of kids, as you do, and one of those kids, their mum is a vet. And because we have a dog and they're friends, we know them quite well. So mum just said, hey, this is what's happened. What should we do? And they said, just give it some water with a bit of sugar in there and then bring it to the clinic tomorrow. So Thursday night, went and did my show. I was kind of bummed out because I didn't know if this cat was okay, if it was going to make it, if I was going to come home to a little kitty funeral. And I came home and it was all right. And look, I'll be honest with you. I'm not like the biggest into pets and stuff. But every time it made a sound, I'm like, oh man, dude, really? Don't do that. I'm going to get attached and then it's just not going to be a fun time. So woke up Friday morning, it was gone. Taken to the clinic. From there, I found out that it was taken to a health and rehabilitation centre. And because, like I mentioned, the vet we know quite well, basically we were told that, the cat was dehydrated, malnourished, and then had some type of cat flu or something. So currently, it is being rehabilitated and, cared for in a foster home. And I thought that was going to be the end of it. I was speaking to one of my friends, and I basically just, recounted the story. And I said this both to my friend and also to my mum at different points, jokingly, about wanting to keep it. And then I said it to my mum first, jokingly, about wanting to keep it. I didn't really mean it because, I don't know, I feel like a pet is a big responsibility. And I don't know if that's necessarily something I'm up to. I mean, we have a dog, but it's not, I don't really have a lot of ownership over it, so I don't really have a lot to do. But yeah, it is, obviously it's a big responsibility. But then I mentioned it to my friend, and I said it, less jovially. I sort of just said, I'm not a dog person, I'm not a cat person. Wouldn't ever really want a pet. But if I did, I would want to, raise it from its younger stage. Obviously, that's what everyone wants with a pet usually. But you wouldn't want to just, buy a puppy or a kitten or a hatchling for birds, I guess. You would want to, adopt a rescue one because that's the responsible thing to do. And not only was this in its, younger stage, it was a kitten, and not only was it a rescue because it was not a... Oh, that's someone home. Hear the doorbell. Thank you for the warning. But not only was it a rescue kitten in the sense that it was, being rehabilitated from either being dumped or being a stray, but it was a rescued. Like I literally rescued it from a dog's mouth. That intersection of things is so infrequent and so rarely going to happen. The more I thought about it, I thought, man, I'm never going to find a situation where I can, rescue a rescued animal like that ever again. And I was explaining that to my friend, and I was still mostly joking when I said, look at this, completely unique situation. Would it be nice to keep it? And she goes, dude, all of those reasons are why you have to keep it. And I was thinking to myself, yeah, I kind of want to, which has been a real process because no one in my family likes cats. It's just me. And B, the little dude is still in the rehabilitation center, so we're not even sure if he's gonna make it. But yeah, so I said, hey, Mum, this is the situation. This is how infrequent the situation is. I want to keep it, and I got a reluctant yes out of her. My sister is a little bit allergic. She gets a sniffle around cats sometimes, but I got her approval. I didn't have to, because she's a child, but I was being kind. I love my sister. She's the best. So why, if we're gonna get an animal and it's gonna impact everyone, just be nice to get their approval, which did not happen with the dog, but that's okay. The only real hurdle is that my dad is really not a cat person, but he is like a me person. Like, he does like me. And especially over the past few years, we've gotten really close. And I feel like if/when I had have asked him, I could have convinced a yes out of him. But Mum sort of sprung it on him early, and in her words, was to preempt him, which only made things harder for me. So I was kind of perturbed about that. But basically, I've not even spoken to him about it. And the reason I haven't spoken to him about it is that when I spoke to the protection place, they said, look, no one else is, like, we haven't promised the kitten to anyone else because obviously it's like, still in foster care, it's still sick. But because you called, when I called on Monday, they said, yeah, well, we'll put you as like the first dude to get it. But, that's, pending what happens on Monday. So call back on Monday and find out the situation. So I haven't brought it up to him yet because I'm waiting till Monday, but I think with him, it's like a very, very reluctant okay, even though we've not had the conversation. So that'll be interesting. And you might be thinking, isn't it kind of irresponsible to take on a pet when no one else in the family wants one, and when you didn't necessarily like overtly want one before? The thing is, I've always sort of wanted a pet. I've always, like a bird is something I've always wanted, but it's always been like, it's never been like 100% serious because I just know the family. We've got a dog, and for them that's enough, and I've not really wanted to burden anyone else. So that's part of it. Part of it is like, a little bit of self-deprecation where I just thought, you're not, smart or responsible enough to look after something else. But I think this just, I don't want to say the perfect storm because doesn't everyone die in the perfect storm? But it's just like sort of the culmination of all these things where it's, it's a kitten, which I prefer to puppies, and it's, a rescue twice over. And I don't know, it was just sort of the perfect set of circumstances, and that made me go, I want it. So I guess next week the podcast is either going to be I got a kitten, or the kitten didn't make it, or I didn't get a kitten. So I guess that's how it goes sometimes. Anyway, I guess we'll crack on. And that was my Valentine's Day. I had a kitten for 20 minutes and then it was gone. So I mean, if you're drawing any other analogies and likenesses from that story and the fact that it was Valentine's Day, that's on you, because I was being 100% literal. There was no allegory behind it. The only other thing I wanted to talk about is Bojack Horseman. Reason I wanted to talk about Bojack is because I touched on it briefly last podcast, and it's one of those shows that's just incredible. It's a really good show. It's phenomenal. Funnily enough, I actually watched the first episode when it came out because I like Charlie Sheen. Now, I should clarify, I don't like Charlie Sheen. I don't like him, but there's just something interesting about the fact that, well, this is what I feel about Charlie Sheen. He's sort of like the dude he was so integral to something that without him it fell apart. And so that was the case of the 2.5 Men show. He was like so integral to that show that he said, hey, I want more money. And they said no. Or maybe it was a drug thing, whatever. But the point is, he left and then the show fell apart. And I don't know what it is, but I think part of me wants to be that integral to something. I want to be so integral to like a radio station or a podcast channel that like without me it just falls apart. I guess there's some level of vanity there. But I think it mostly comes down to just wanting to be... Oh, don't say that. That's going to sound way too sad. But you don't have any option. I think it comes down to wanting to be valued in a workplace context, not in a love and family context. So that's sort of why I like Charlie Sheen. I don't like him, but it's sort of like a weird... Anyway, so that sort of made me go, oh yeah, I'll watch Bojack Horseman. I'll give it a try. It's animated. I like animated. And I watched the first episode and I go, oh, this is, it's not good. I don't like it. It's not funny. It's kind of annoying. It's kind of horrible. Grating, really. Anyway, that was when it first came out. And about, I don't know, late last year, so like, 6, 7, 8, 9 months ago, my friend convinced me to watch it. And I said, yeah, I watched the first episode. It wasn't really for me. And she goes, no, you just watch a couple episodes, right? Just watch 4 or 5. And so I did. And I got through the first episode reluctantly. And then I watched the second episode. And after the second episode, I go, oh, it's really good. I get it now. Bojack Horseman is just like this phenomenal show about an anthropomorphic horse that was like a sitcom star in the 70s, but it's kind of focusing on his life now that he's sort of this like, a washed up drunkard that is no longer relevant and is just sort of living off royalties. And it's so incredibly interesting because Bojack Horseman is not a real person. Not in the context that it's like an animated made-up show and it's not real. Within the show's universe, he's not a real character. He's not a real person. Bojack does not exist in that show. Now, of course, you're thinking to yourself, well, I mean, yeah, he obviously does. To which I would reply to you, yes, he obviously does. The show is about, Bojack Horseman, right? Washed up celebrity, and about, his friends and the people around him that are, interact with him. Or in the case of one of the characters writing an autobiography about him. Or in the case of one of the characters, manages him professionally. And the more you watch the show, you start to understand why he's just a jerk piece of garbage. He's a drunkard, uses a lot of drugs, and he's a bad influence, right? And he causes a lot of pain around him, to the people around him. And every time you look at him and you go, he's not a good person. Now, this isn't really the important thing that I wanted to get into, but it is, key to the conversation that he is a bad person, and for the most part, you dislike him. But the thing is, the more that you watch it, you start to understand why he's a bad person. Is that a phone? That is a phone. Podcast take precedent. Priority precedent. Takes precedent. You start to understand why he's a bad person. You start to understand more about, him growing up in the industry, and so him growing up in general. Find out what his parents are like and what his grandparents are like, and that tells you a lot more about the character. And the more you watch it, the sadder it is, because it's just this really, it's just like a vicious cycle of he is a bad person. He does bad things and he doesn't care enough about other people, and he ends up hurting other people. But that's because his upbringing was just awful. A lot of the pain and suffering that he dishes out to other people, sometimes inadvertently, you can see a direct correlation between the way he, was brought up and the way he was raised, being a product of his environment. The thing that's, I guess, particularly tragic is that you then go on to see his parents as characters, and then you go on to see, their parents, and you see that this vicious cycle didn't start with his parents, being garbage to him. It's just like it's a long cycle. It's like it goes up the food chain. It's like whenever you see like a bad kid in school, you go, oh, he's a bad kid. But, on some level, you want to blame the parents for not raising that kid properly. But on some level, don't you go, oh, well, maybe you blame their parents for not raising the kids properly to raise that kid. And then, look, I know it doesn't make a lot of sense, because at some point, you're essentially going so far back that it's just irrelevant. But it is relevant in the case of Bojack, because his parents and their actions and their experiences really shaped him into the, bitter, terrible person, horse person that he is now. And that's important. And there's a lot of intrigue in that. It's very interesting. It's very enthralling. It's very captivating. Watching this, horse man guy, who really suffered at the hands of his parents, sometimes inadvertently, how he's trying to navigate life and get through and work through the issues and the problems that he has as a result of it. It's captivating. On some level, you just feel sorry for him. But on a way that is incredibly difficult to write, you also don't feel sorry for him, Because look, on one hand, he's experienced, just a horrible upbringing, and that's not his fault. But at some point, don't you have to say, look, I was a product of this environment, but I have to put my foot down and break this cycle, because otherwise I'm just going to raise kids that are, horrible, because I don't know how to, navigate a family situation. My parents weren't good parents to me, so how am I going to be a good parent to my kid, right? If you don't put your foot down, you're going to end up, essentially ruining that kid the same way Bojack was ruined. And I say ruined, I'm doing the air quotations that you can't see because it's a podcast, but you either have to break the cycle or you perpetuate it. And that's where a lot of the conflicts comes in, because he's the main character, title character. So look, that's very much what the show is about. It's about Bojack navigating through life, trying to understand work, understand his friends, understand family, and trying to understand life, trying to get through. And it's, I think it's a tale in some way we can all relate to. There's aspects of that show that each person can relate to. So you might be thinking to yourself, well, okay, sounds like a good show. Maybe I'll watch it. It sounds like it's, pretty interesting. It's got some good story writing. It does. And, in case you aren't aware, because unless you'd be familiar with the show, you wouldn't be, they're very good at hiding details within the fore and the background. Written on... so I think, and I have to remember it specifically, but in one of the episodes, Princess Caroline, which is his manager, has a coffee cup, and if you pause at the right moment and you really zoom in, you can see on it says Pringles cupcakes or something to that effect. So they're just riffing on the fact that they at coffee places get your name wrong. So the show is really good at hiding little details like that. It's really funny. They go to a lot of effort. In the first season, I think they said, they did it, but nobody noticed. But then people started noticing it, so they put it in more and more. So, you can watch the show 3 or 4 times. You're going to see new stuff each time, which is cool. So between the good writing and the good show and the good music and, that, you might be thinking, okay, well, that's Bojack. So what on earth are you talking about when you say Bojack isn't a real character? Here we go. I think the TV show Bojack Horseman is as much, and look, I don't know if this is common knowledge or not, or if this is just it's something going on inside my head. Maybe other people have said this more succinctly and eloquently than me before. But I think the TV show Bojack Horseman is equally as much about the character Bojack navigating through life as it is everybody else. And I say that because the more you watch it, the more you start to understand the side and the support characters. You understand more about them, their lives, their context, their upbringings, what they do when Bojack's around, what they do when Bojack isn't around, and more importantly, what they do as a result of Bojack, how his actions affect other people. And the more I thought about it, it doesn't have to be Bojack. You could take the name Bojack and replace it with anyone, right? You could replace it with my name. You could replace it with your name. And the show would still work. It would be about a person, right? And there would be a large portion of the TV show that revolves around how this one character affects the people around him. But when you start to watch and you understand more about the characters and, how they navigate through life, and I need to stop going back to that navigate line. But the more you start to learn about these characters and what really happens to them and how they deal with things, you think, oh, this person has caused just some pretty horrific things to different people. From, ruined relationships and ruined marriages and ruined friendships and, bad family history and, even death and, abuse of substance. Bojack is just the source of so many problems. But when you think about it even more, this whole TV show takes place in it's either Los Angeles or California, one of those really big Hollywood cities. Or actually, they've got they have a joke where they have the name of the town, or it's not Hollywood, but I think it is set in Hollywood actually, because that one episode. But yeah, so it is set in this Hollywood scenario, and the more I thought about it, Bojack doesn't even have to be there. You could replace that character with sort of just a grey blur and just replace it with Hollywood, because that's really what it is. The more I've watched it, I've thought this isn't this isn't about like one character ruining people's lives and affecting people's lives. It's the whole, that whole high pressure, you know, BuzzFeed article writing, manager of, celebrities and talent. It's just that high profile, high pressure lifestyle. That's what this show's about. That's what Bojack is. Bojack isn't this, horse that was in a sitcom. He is Hollywood and that nature and that life distilled into a person. So, very slight spoilers, and it's not, I won't mention any names, but just like one, plot point. One of the characters wants to have a child, and they, struggle a lot with, finding the time for a child and finding the, the capacity, both physically and romantically, to have a child. They just struggle with that. And that's a whole, plot line that they follow and they develop. And it's very interesting because it's not about the main character. It's about a different character that's being affected by Bojack. And the more you think about it, you could just, if you had to say the sentence, because of such and such's relationship with Bojack, such and such finds it difficult to start a family and have time for a family. But if you were to replace Bojack with, her job, it works the same way. And with all of their characters, it sort of revolves around Bojack, right? Every bad and, sometimes good thing that happens to all these characters is a result of Bojack. And he is essentially the spirit of Hollywood. The whole, fast cars, suit and tie party, high profile Instagram page, all that. That lifestyle is what this TV show, and I truly believe that is what essentially the TV show is trying to get at. That is what the TV show is about. It's not about Bojack ruining people's lives, although there is, an aspect of, hey, this is a damaged person that is, both internally damaged but also externally damaged, and by that I mean, affects the people around him. Sure, it's about Bojack, but on some level, it's just you watching Hollywood take its toll on other people. And if you were to keep the same events that happened to all the surrounding characters, but you just removed any evidence of Bojack, it would just be about a bunch of characters struggling with life in this high-profile scenario. Now, look, I say high profile, high pressure, as if it's like the worst thing in the world. And look, I think I even mentioned this on the radio or in a previous podcast, but there's, more high-pressure things than, being an Instagram celebrity or, being an actor, right? You've got very physically draining things. You've got very mentally draining things on a much higher and harder scale than, what the characters experience in this TV show. One of them's a writer, one of them's a manager, one of them's a bum. They sort of just like, bum around, don't do anything. You got to take the Australian way of using the word bum as like someone that not as in a homeless person, as like a vagrant, but someone that sort of just like, couch surfs and doesn't really do anything, right? But all these people are being affected by just their environment. And their environment is essentially Bojack, and Bojack is essentially an environment. So if you were to sit down and watch it, and I highly recommend it because it's, it's one of the, best shows I've ever watched, top 10 easily. But if you were to sit down and watch it all the way through, and then think to yourself, what if I replaced Bojack with just the words spirit of Hollywood, right? And you would see that he is completely replaceable. You could replace it with, one of the other damaged characters in the show, or you could replace it with no one. And that spirit of Hollywood and that, high profile pressure lifestyle, that would still affect all these people in all this way. This is just a way to, I guess, in terms of a story, distill it into a person, and B, sort of give the show a focal point. But, I truly think that's what it's about. And, I think one of these days when the TV show has run its course, you're going to see an interview with, the creators, and they're going to say, yeah, this is essentially what we were trying to go for. And, yeah, that's not me tooting my own horn. Wow, I can't speak. It's been an hour. I'm going to wrap it up. It's not me tooting my own horn about, I know how TV shows are written. I got a critical writer's eye. No, it's just an observation, but I think it makes a lot of sense. And even if it's not what they're going for, I think it's a really interesting way of looking at it. So yeah, that's really the takeaway for this podcast. Go and watch Bojack Horseman. It's incredible. And the other things I mentioned, well, yeah, go and make some wine, I guess. Don't make a kitten because that's weird. But anyway, thank you all for listening. Don't text and drive, and I'll see you next time.